Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone here is ready for the webinar. Thank you for joining us today. This is the second part of our webinar series entitled Moving Our Children to the Lighter Side to observe this year's World Obesity Day. The first webinar was successfully held last March 4, coinciding with the celebration of World Obesity Day. I am Gab Labrador from the National Nutrition Council, and I will be one of your moderators for today.
Good morning. I am Catherine Bukton from NNC, joining Gab once again as co-moderator. Thank you, everyone, and we are happy to be with you again for the second part of our three-part webinar series. As of this moment, we have around 140 participants here at our Zoom platform and some viewers from the NNC Facebook page. This dissemination forum of results of studies on overweight and obesity aims to present local studies to increase awareness and knowledge on the extent of overnutrition here in our country, as well as to share to you some good practices in addressing malnutrition. This is organized by the National Nutrition Council together with UNICEF and Nutrition Center of the Philippines. During the first part of our webinar, our speakers talked about the growing problem of childhood obesity and the factors related to its increasing prevalence. Moreover, the landscape analysis on childhood overweight and obesity in the Philippines provides us with understanding of gaps in our interventions, and more importantly, our speakers from the first session underscores these double duty and overarching actions in addressing not only overnutrition but undernutrition as well. We also heard the first-hand experience of Mandaluyong City with regards to its programs in fighting obesity at the community level. For today, we are joined by another panel of speakers who will talk about the changing food environment and marketing and their potential roles or influence in overweight and obesity, especially among children.
Thank you, Ms.
Over to you,
Kathy,
Gab.
for that introduction. I am sure everyone here is thrilled to hear from our speakers today, of course, including Kathy and I. But before we start, we would like to inform everyone that this webinar is also currently being live streamed via the National Nutrition Council official Facebook page. So for your colleagues who will not be able to join us in the Zoom platform, you may inform them to visit NNC's official Facebook page. And do not forget to share the stream as well so we can reach more people who may be interested to know more about today's topic. Again, we would like to enlighten everyone on this year's World Obesity Day theme, Everybody Needs Everybody. This webinar is one way for us to bring together individuals and relevant stakeholders to increase awareness about obesity and bring forth ways that may help bring our overweight kids to the lighter side. As explained in the last webinar, the lighter side is the opposite of the dark side, analogous to Darth Vader in Star Wars. So for today, we hope that the Force is here with us once again.
Yeah, I know that that force will be stronger for especially nasa part 2 na tayo ng ating webinar.
Tama, Ms.
Okay.
Kathy.
Yes, we have some few reminders for our participants, especially those who are here in the Zoom platform. So for the house rules, during the webinar, your mic will be automatically muted. You may use the raise hand function if you have questions or if you would like to share your thoughts during the open forum. You may also use your earphones for better sound quality. For questions, this will be entertained by our speakers during the open forum. However, while our speakers are presenting, you may send your comments and interact with our participants through the chat box. You may send also your questions via the Q&A box, and we will address them once the floor is open. Just make sure that your chats are sent via the all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your message. May we request also everyone to please rename your display name to indicate first the agency and then followed by your, the agency that you are representing followed by your full name for ease of identification. For the presentations, I know many are asking on this or will be asking later on. This will be uploaded through the NNC website So you may access the presentations and download maybe by next week, including the presentations from our first part, first part of our webinar last March 4. Thank you, Gab.
Thank you, Ms. Cathy, for those reminders. So before we start, of course, let us ask the Lord for his guidance for today's activity.
Dear God, thank you for the opportunity to meet together. Please help us to come together to make this institution reflect your kingdom. Breathe life into our ideas and decisions. Help us build a team that has love and respect at its heart. Give us the strength to continue working for your kingdom in this time of pandemic. Lord, come give us the inspiration to be the best we can be. May we be a shining example of your goodness and truth within, wherever we are. Inspire our thoughts, discussions, and ideas, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth for the greater glory of you. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
All right, so we are now ready to hear from our first presenter. So our first speaker presented during the first part of our webinar last March 4, the landscape analysis on childhood overweight and obesity, and gave us insights, of course, on how we can address this problem and ways to improve. Today, she will talk about the local food environment and how it influences the diet of our children, which may affect their nutrition status and health status as well. Please welcome Dr. Mary Christine Aina Castro, Executive Director of the Nutrition Center of the Philippines. Dr. Aina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gab, and good morning to everyone. Good morning. I'll be presenting this morning our study on the pilot study on determining the drivers of diet intake among Filipino children and adolescents. So this is a pilot study conducted in Zamboanga City, and it was supported by UNICEF Philippines and AXA. So for the outline of my presentation, I have a short introduction or background, the objectives of the study, the methods of data collection, the study sites and summary of respondents, the profile of respondents, and the results of our pilot in Zamboanga City. And I'll start with a short quote from Alice Waters. Good food is a right, not a privilege. It brings children a positive relationship with their health, community, and environment. So the 2019 NNS showed that 19% that while undernutrition is still a problem, overweight and obesity among children 5 to 10 years old and 10 to 19 years old are on the rise. So almost 1 in 10 children are overweight and obese. And in the last, in a span of 12 years from 2003 to 2015, the increase in overweight or obesity prevalence among the 10 to 19-year-old age group almost doubled. So it's an increasing problem that we need to address. So when we talk of food environment, it's actually a broad concept and can be defined based on 2 perspectives, markets and food systems. The food environment is actually an interface where people interact with the wider food system to acquire and consume foods. The food sources, here the graphics show that the food sources in the food environment include market-based, the own production, wild harvested foods, and transfers or gifts. So this slide shows the interface of the food environment within the food system. So the food system includes the production, storage, transformation, and transportation of food, to the acquisition and consumption of food by the family, which leads to health and nutrition outcomes. Within the food environment, there's an external domain and a personal domain. And these both interact with each other. The external domain includes the availability of the food, the price of the food, vendor and product properties, and marketing and regulation of the food. While the personal domain includes accessibility, affordability, convenience, and desirability. So this exploratory study allowed us to produce narratives which identify the different factors in children's and adolescents' lives that combine to influence the foods and beverages they consume as they go about their day-to-day lives. These narratives can be used for advocacy and to add as evidence to identify what policies and legislation would be most effective in promoting healthy food environments and prevent malnutrition, and how they could be designed. So what are the objectives of the study? The study was undertaken primarily to determine how the food environment influences the diets of children aged 6 months to 18 years in the context of their lived realities, and to obtain a greater understanding of the children's dietary practices. Specifically, it aimed to describe the usual daily routines of what and when the children eat, determine the influences of food environments, and general health to children's dietary practices, and identify the current influence of the COVID-19 pandemic to children's dietary practices. So we did individual in-depth interviews, focus group discussions, and direct observations. We had identified 6 study sites. So 2 sites in Mindanao, that's Zamboanga City and Godod, Zamboanga del Norte. 3 sites in Samar. 3 sites in island of Samar, Gandara, Catbalogan City, and Mondragon, which is actually in northern Samar. And 1 site in Metro Manila, which is Valenzuela City. However, today I'll just be presenting the results of the pilot study done in Zamboanga City, because we're still completing the data collection for the rest of the sites. So you can see here that we had the 3 data collection methods: IDIs, FGDs, and observation, and the different age groups that we covered for each method. So for the IDIs, there was 1 respondent each. Of course, for the 6 months to 10 years old, the parent or caregiver was the primary respondent. But for the 11 to 18 years old, it was the child or adolescent who was the primary respondent. The FGDs, it was the children were the ones who were the respondents. So what was the profile of our respondents in Zamboanga City? So it was mostly male. Most of them were enrolled this school year, and most of them used the modular method of education. The primary source of income of the household was the most common one was manual labor, which included construction work, factory work, pedicab drivers or technicians, followed by family businesses, sari-sari stores, or vendors. But there was around 1/10 who depended on remittances of OFWs working abroad. Most of the households had 6 to 10 members living in the household, followed by less than 5, and 1/10 had more than 10 members in the household. So here are some pictures of our data collection in Zamboanga City. So this is a focus group discussion, and this is the direct observation. So what were the main results? What did the children usually eat? So their typical diet consisted of meat, animal source foods, pork, chicken, or fish, rice and vegetables, and some snack foods. However, during the COVID pandemic, their usual fare transitioned to rice, canned foods, instant foods, and vegetables. The main effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on their diet was that they really had decreased intake of fresh foods. Their intake of processed foods, such as canned goods and instant noodles, increased mainly because these were donated and also cheaper to buy. And they had limited purchasing power. So they tended to buy more vegetables and fish and less pork and chicken, less sugary drinks and foods, such as soft drinks and instant drinks and cookies or biscuits for their snacks. And they also tended to purchase smaller volumes or retail packs instead of bulk sizes. So in the pilot study, what did we see as the influences of the food environment? So these can be divided into access to food, the family's experience with food, and their food choices. With regards to access to food, so there were 4 points that came out in the interviews. The first is the places where the food can be purchased or acquired. So people tend to purchase food that is accessible to them. So they say that they usually buy in the nearest sari-sari stores, those that can be accessed by foot from their house, or those that can be accessed by bike for those who had bikes. So places where the food is eaten or consumed, they usually eat at home. Who cooks the food? It's usually the parents. For food that they purchase, for the ready-to-eat food that they purchase from nearby carinderias or houses, or there's one respondent mentioned that they bought from this neighbor who sells home-cooked food. So they usually purchase food from those that they already trust, those people that they already trust or they know. And usually they prefer to purchase food that is easy to cook. So that's why also during the pandemic, the instant noodles and the processed foods or canned goods was also part of their preference when they were able to buy, because it's also convenient and easy to cook. With regards to experience to food, the parents tend to also buy food that they know their children are familiar with. So there was a parent who said that she usually buys fish because she knows that this is the favorite of her child. There was also one parent who said that when he had extra money, this was before the pandemic, he would buy the 1 peso snack food, the little snack foods, the snack food in the little packs that only cost 1 peso, because he knows that his child is happy when he brings that home as pasalubong. Who to eat with? The respondents mentioned that they usually eat with their families. For the leftovers, this refers to how important the food is to them, because even if they have leftovers, they eat it for the next meal. One example given by a respondent is that if there's leftover rice, they cook it, they make it into fried rice, or what we usually call sinangag. If there's leftover fish from lunchtime, they also serve it for dinner, but they just add another viand like vegetables so that it differs from the previous meal. For the snack in between meals, the respondents mentioned that they usually have take snacks that are affordable, such as turon or the fried the bananas, sliced bananas wrapped in wrapped in lumpia wrapper and fried. With they take these snacks usually with soda or soft drinks. So they usually also eat eat snacks either with their family or with their friends. Because during the time that we did the interviews, those who were 16 years old and above were already allowed out of the house. So that's why the adolescents age 16 and above were already able to spend time with their friends. So with regards to food choices, the decision on what to eat, of course, usually depends on the one who's able to purchase the food, which is usually the parents. So as I mentioned a while ago, the parents usually also defer to choose to buy the food that they know their children like. So they said that I buy this usually. I buy fish because that's their favorite, and it's also good because it's affordable. Like the lunggong, it's affordable and it's also their favorite. So the children say that their decision is curtailed because they say that they feel that sometimes they have no choice on what is served in the household because it's the parents who purchase the food. Taste of food, of course, is also a big factor with affecting the food choice. So there's a respondent who said that we usually buy bread from this bakery because it tastes good. So it's like that's their favorite bakery already, and that's where they always buy the bread. So taste of food, what they already enjoyed previously, is a major factor in the food choice. Perceptions also affects the food choice. For example, who prepared the food? As I mentioned a while ago, if the food is cooked, as long as they know the person who cooks the food and serves the food and sells that ready to cook food, as long as they know the person and they trust that person, they will buy food from them. Another example of perception is the food clean? Does it look? The parent respondent said that we assess it. Of course, we assess it first. If we feel that the food is clean enough, that's when we buy from that store. Okay, so those were the initial findings from the pilot study that we did in Zamboanga City. We hope to have more in-depth insights from the results in the other sites included in the study. So that ends my presentation. Thank you and good morning to all. Back to you, Gab and Kathy.
Thank you, Dr. Aina, for that presentation. Also, just to reiterate your presentation on healthy food environment, we we know that some factors also influence food environment, and those are, of course, access to food, experience to food, and also food choices. So, of course, parents have a major role in their children's diet. So we want to make sure that children will have access to healthier food, so they will be more familiar with it, and then later on will prefer these healthier food options. So we are now ready for our second presenter. Ms. Kathy will be introducing our second speaker.
Thank you, Gab. With the advancement in information technology, our society heavily relies on the power of being online. We easily connect to our loved ones, consume entertainment, news, and information all via the touch of a button. Children are spending more time online, especially with blended learning for their education during this time of pandemic. And with this, marketing of food and beverages is also shifting digitally. For our second speaker, she will talk about how digital marketing and its different strategies can affect children's food preferences and behaviors. Let us welcome Ms. Georgina Belardo, Child Rights and Business Officer of UNICEF Philippines. The floor is yours, Ms. George.
Salamat. Magandang umaga sa ating lahat. I'm sorry, first of all, to our guests from other countries. I might shift from Filipino to English during this presentation. So I will now share my screen. Can you? Okay. So first of all, I want to acknowledge the team behind this study. I'm honored to present it, but the whole team behind it are the people here in the webinar also. We have Gagay and Alice from UNICEF Philippines. We have Fiona from our regional office, and Mimi is also here from the UK, and she was also um, a big part of the study. And then also commercial lang, thanks to our sponsors, AXA. So we're going to begin the presentation. So this is a scan of digital ads for foods high in fats, sugar, and salt. So bakit digital ads? Why did we want to study the digital marketing place? And a big part of this was because of the very high use of digital devices by Filipinos. The latest numbers show uh, number one, the Philippines is the country that spends the most time online in the world. We spend almost 11 hours a day on the internet. And then we are also the country that spends the most time on social media in the world, 4 hours and 15 minutes a day. Our most used platforms are YouTube and Facebook. Uh, During the pandemic, I think we shifted because last year the most used platforms first were Facebook and then YouTube. Now it's the other way around, but then just by very little increments. And then the Philippines is the biggest Facebook market in the world relative to population. Actually, our Facebook market is over 100% because there are a lot of duplicate accounts on Facebook. So we have the biggest advertising market in the world. And the youngest two age groups that comprise this biggest ad audience on Facebook are the youngest age groups as well. So ang ginawa namin is we did also, as part of this study, a survey just to see what specifically are the behaviors of children online. So we saw that Filipino children age 5 to 17, 5 years old pa lang, nasa internet na. They are all avid users. 71% of them report using the internet 6 to 12 hours a day for games, browsing, social media, shopping, and school. They use Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. In terms of food advertising, the children said that they don't like the ads online, no, except for food ads in general. They were different because they like the ads for burgers, pizza, fries, fried chicken, milk tea, donuts, and instant noodles. And they ask their parents to buy the foods that they see online. So ibig sabihin that advertising really triggers demand. Um, they also saw this. The study also saw high search results for yogurt drinks, cakes, sweet biscuits, and other pastries, soft drinks, ice cream, and chocolate. During this time, no, during COVID, a large spike was seen in online search for yogurt-based drinks and similar dairy products. So nakita nila sa study na ito yung mga sinesearch ng tao. And then also, in real life, this was also the time in 2020 where the yogurt drink category really exploded with new product launches and increased advertising. So you will see mga Macau Imperial Tea, excuse me, Dutch Mill, Kumi, Block 513, even Starbucks, Sunkist, Red Mango, even Yakult came out with a half-liter version during this time because demand really exploded. And this is because advertising increased. There were many product launches and many ads on yogurt drinks, which just goes to show that advertising can really create demand and increase demand for these kinds of products. Next. As you will see, food and beverage marketing is associated with unhealthy diets and increasing rates of overweight and obesity. So nakakatapa talaga ang advertising. Children are especially vulnerable to digital ads. I'm sure nakita nyo na tong RC ad na to. Why are they more vulnerable to advertising? For one thing, there are more children who are inadvertently exposed to more advertising these days. There is a study that said that there are more 18-year-old males using Facebook than there are 18-year-old males living on Earth today. What does this mean? Ibig sabihin, madaming bata who are even younger than 18 who are making accounts on Facebook. So, and then they just pretend to say that they are 18 years old. So there is a huge batch of younger children pretending to be 18, and all of them are exposed to advertising at 18 years old for 18-year-olds. The second reason is that children have lower cognitive and emotional defenses against the personalization, reinforcement, and incentives that are offered through digital media. During the nung 19 Kopong-Kopong, a long time ago, all we had was free TV, and we were exposed to advertising when we watched shows on free TV. So marketing companies only targeted you based on the show that you watch. Are you watching That's Entertainment? Are you watching a noontime show? So you are only targeted based on that show. So the audiences were homogeneous and all the same. But then now with the internet, digital media can really target you specifically. And this is really where the power of digital marketing comes in. It's very targeted and it's more intrusive now because they use two things that we never saw before with free TV. They have hyper targeting and dynamic creatives. So, what is hyper targeting? So, it can deliver custom audiences. So, um, alam ng internet kung anong ginagawa mo sa internet. Nababasa nila lahat yan, and social media platforms like Facebook can literally get your data, your behavior online, on Facebook, actually online, and use that to serve you advertising that is exactly perfect for you as a person. So I'll give you an example. Uh, for demographics, they can tell how old you are. They can tell how old your children are and from what socioeconomic group you are in. They can tell what your interests are, if you like embroidery or wellness, or if you like lo-fi hip hop. They know that data, and then they know that if you are an engaged online shopper or a frequent international traveler, and they also know who you work for, what kind of company you work for, and they know if you are in a long distance relationship, and they also know what kind of phone you use, if you are an analog phone user or if you are an iPhone user. So all this hyper targeting makes it more impactful and more strategic for them to target you with messages that will trigger a response specifically from you. Tapos nun, meron naman sila na also these strategies that they use to make you increase your engagement. The first one is all these different ways on mobile. They say that they should the social media platforms use this strategies. They use animation to capture attention. They front load main messages agad. So you see the main messages. They make advertising that is built specifically for mobile. So you see them in their best form when you are on your cell phone. And then they make their ads 15 seconds or less, because that's the most effective uh, format and time for ads. And then they make their ads designed for sound off, because that's the behavior that we have when we consume media on our cell phones. So they know all these things and they use all these things. And that's what makes digital marketing really a lot more effective. So with that, so now we will go to a few of the results from the study. No? So this study aims to measure the exposure and power of different online ads of selected food and drink brands in the Philippines. UNICEF would like to do this to build evidence to advocate for legislation to reduce the marketing and advertising to children of foods high in fat, sugar, and salt. So the first thing we did was we selected the top 20 brands that are the most active in online. So you have the fast foods, of course, you have the yogurt drinks, you have soft drinks, chocolate, cheese, syempre instant noodles, then tsaka ice cream. So ito yung mga gusto natin na mga pagkain at saka gusto ng ating mga anak. So the first thing we measured are the power variables of the advertising that these brands do on the internet. So tinignan namin yung how what kind of posts they have. Did they have just yung mga text na post, or may mga pictures, o may mga videos, kasi nakaka-affect yon sa ating uh, um, sa effect sa atin ng mga ads nila. If it's on video, then we of course are more immersed. And then how many people viewed the ads? So were there a lot more people who stopped really and looked at the ads? And then how many people reacted to the ads? So tinamaan ba sila? Did they like the ad and put their hearts, or did they make comments, or did they share the ads? Which is really one of the biggest indicators that you like an ad, is if you share it with your friends. And then does the ad have a logo or packaging or product shot, because that means that it's directly related to the product that you like. And then we also measured the persuasive appeal. So ano ba yung mga bagay na nakaka-affect sa atin sa mga ads? So when we see lines like now in an even bigger pack, that really increases our attention, no? So also it's easy to eat on the go. That's important and appealing to us. This is great tasting. Naniniwala tayo pag sinasabi ng brand na masarap sila. It's packed full of vitamins and give you a burst of energy. So these things are good traits of brands that we like. The price is also, of course, very appealing to us. Its uniqueness, and then uh, also because important are, is it fun, and does it show family relationships? These are important aspects that really affect us as audiences. And then if the product says that they are the best in the world, naniniwala tayo dyan. Okay. So what are the results of the study when we did these measurements on the power and persuasion of the ads of these 20 brands? So of the 20 brands studied, over 99% of them were not suitable for marketing to children, according to the WHO, uh, World Health Organization regional criteria. Yet, the marketing for these brands and products was found to be very appealing to children. The second one is that 1 in 5 marketing posts appealing to children and teens featured Filipino celebrities promoting these products not permitted for marketing to children. And alam niyo naman, mahal natin ang ating mga celebs tsaka influencers. So we really follow the recommendations that they give in the ads. If they are eating the tuna pie, we will eat the tuna pie also. Next is social media food marketing on food brand pages in the Philippines focuses particularly on fun, taste, enjoyment, satisfaction, family relationships, health, and nutrition, with some reference to new products, price, entertainment, and events. Meaning that these are the buttons that really trigger Filipinos. We like to see things that are fun, that are tasty, that show family and health and nutrition. There's somebody raising their hand. Ma'am, mamaya na lang siguro pagkatapos. Thank you. The two participants. So these are the things that really trigger us, and that's why advertisers use them. So the features that we like and that what children like about these ads are that they contain brand characters, mahal natin si Jollibee, cartoons, bright colors and graphics, children and teens in posts. They like to see themselves, the kids like to see themselves in the ads. Enjoyable activities such as games and parent-child or family bonding occasions, such as snack and meal preparation and eating together. Um, because this is one thing that we really found that's really peculiar to the Philippine market. We like strong family bonding in our ads. In other regions, teen targeted ads, like ads that are for teens, they show more friendships between teens. But our ads, even if they're for young people, show strong family bonding because that's important to us, and that shows talaga our Filipino values, even in our advertising. So this means that brands and products build their appeal. So yung mga nag-advertise build their appeal not only with adults who are likely to buy the products, but they also build their appeal with children and teens because of this common effect that we have that they have on us, so that they learn to form preference for these brands and request them and buy them. So when you show ads that show family bonding, like this Lucky Me ad, you are not only appealing to the adults, but also you're appealing to the children. So the children learn to like these brands until they grow up. And these are the brands that they ask from their parents. And syempre, because their parents also like the family bonding that is showed in the ad, then they also buy these brands. So in conclusion, in sum, this food marketing study found that in the Philippines, social media is saturated with marketing for unhealthy foods and non-alcoholic beverages. Most marketing has all ages appeal, with 72% posts appealing to children and 84% appealing to teens. Social media marketing communicates messages that unhealthy foods are fun, tasty, enjoyable, promote family love, have healthy and nutritional qualities, and they are in our special celebrations, and they even support physical activity. So this kind of marketing creates emotional associations of love, fun, sharing, and health, as well as drawing on the star power of local sporting and media celebrities to promote an almost entirely unhealthy advertised diet for children and their families. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miss Bilardo, for that very timely and informative presentation. Actually, we had a comment sa chat box. Miss Laura says, sabi niya, nagugulat daw siya kasi magka-chat lang sila ng sister niya, and then may nabanggit siyang word. Then after a while, may sponsor agad na related dun sa specific word na nabanggit nila sa chat nila ng sister niya. So, sabi niya, ultimate stalker daw po ang marketing. Actually,
Oo,
this is the power
that's
of artificial intelligence-based marketing. Yes. And I remembered actually yung news about our children, about mga bata na accidentally nakakapag-order online. So, yung isang bata, 7-year-old from Cebu, nakapag-order siya ng 40 orders ng chicken and fries. Dahil nagkamali lang yung bata. Then 40, basta 40 po yung na-place niyang order. Then dumating sa bahay nila mga 33 riders. So ang ginawa ng tatay niya or ng parent niya ata is pinenta na lang yung ibang dumating na order. Then yung around 4 ata ang binili niya mismo from the rider. Then another child from NCR, nag-place naman siya ng order ng cake. Instead of 1, ang na-order ng bata ay 3 to 4. Well, I'm sharing this kasi yun makikita natin na basically yung kanila or generally yung mga batang to ay very exposed talaga sa mga ganitong unhealthy food products. And this is really a high time for us to step up and strategize on how we can reduce their exposure and also to combat the power of this marketing of unhealthy food and beverages. Again, thank you po, Ms. George. And for our participants, let me remind you that if you have questions, please write them on the Q&A box. Over to you, Gab.
All right, thank you, Miss Kathy, and also Miss George for that very interesting presentation. So we know that healthy food choices can be a big boost, especially to our growing children. And as much as possible, we want them to eat a variety of healthy food every day to get the nutrients that they need. So as global markets expand, food practices of the population also change. And given the wide selection of available food items, so in particular, highly processed foods are now readily available, which can be very attractive to a child's palate. Our third speaker will talk about the growing availability and demand of these highly processed foods and its possible impact on our children's health. She is a nutrition specialist for the UNICEF East Asia Pacific Regional Office. Let us welcome Ms. Fiona Watson. Ms. Fiona?
Good morning, everybody. And I'm delighted to be with you today to be able to make this presentation on marketing of highly processed foods in the Philippines. The presentation will focus on an analysis of Euromonitor International reports. So Euromonitor International is a market research company that collects information from all over the world on everything, on industries, companies, products, and trends in sales. And this study looked specifically at the reports on sales of highly processed foods and drinks in 6 countries, including the Philippines. And today I'll just present the information, the data from the Philippines. Next slide, please. So to start, what are highly processed foods and drinks? What do we mean when we say that? They have been defined by Monteiro and colleagues as foods which have been industrially modified to make them very tasty, hyperpalatable, and attractive, but most importantly, to have a longer shelf life so that they can be sold in shops and kept for longer. They are full of energy, highly calorific, and high in unhealthy types of fats, sugars, salt, but they're poor sources of dietary fiber, vitamins and minerals, and protein. So the kinds of foods that we're talking about, which are particularly attractive to children, are the fizzy drinks, the sweet soft drinks, savory snacks like crisps and chips, the sweet confectionery and cakes, and fast foods, and a particular sort of relevance in this region is the bubble teas and the milky teas, which are particularly a fad at the moment. Next slide, please. So the objectives of the study were, first of all, to understand whether the sales of highly processed food and drinks are going up or down, and which ones are increasing sales and which aren't. Secondly, to look at who are the major companies who are selling these products. Is it the multinationals? Is it the local companies? Thirdly, to understand from an industry perspective, from the perspective of the companies who are selling these foods, what they see as the opportunities, but also the threats to their markets. And what are the strategies that they're adopting to sell these types of products? And finally, from that, to recommend some key policy actions from a public health perspective on how to improve the diets of children and their families in the Philippines. I see there's a message saying that there's no video. Gab, I'll leave you to sort that out, but I'll continue with the presentation in case that's just for one person. So we started in this study to decide which reports we wanted to look at, because there are many, many Euromonitor reports. And we selected the reports that focused on particular categories of products which are generally associated with highly processed foods. So the four categories were the soft drink category, sweet snacks, savory snacks, and baby foods and formula. And then we also looked at three categories of food services. So this is looking at outlets, food outlets, which are again associated with the sale of these highly processed products. So fast food outlets, street kiosks, and cafes and bars. So those are the categories, and within those categories, Euromonitor International look at specific subcategories of those foods. So for example, in the savory snack category, there are 6 subcategories for which they collect data. So nuts, salty snacks, savory biscuits, pretzels, popcorn, and then other like seaweed snacks and all sorts of other things. Next slide, please. So what we did was analyze the data that's presented in these reports, and there were two types of analysis. First of all, looking at the numbers and doing a quantitative analysis. So for the food categories, we were looking at sales trends over time in terms of volume, that's the weight per capita, and value, the pesos per capita spent. And by type of subcategory, I've just mentioned that there were various types of subcategories. And then we also looked at the top companies by ownership share of a particular category. And among the food services, it was similar, but we looked at the trend and the number of transactions of an outlet over time. Was that going up? Was there more transactions or less? But we also did a qualitative analysis because those reports contain a commentary which is written from an industry perspective. And as I mentioned before, that commentary talks about the opportunities for companies, what they consider their challenges and threats, and then the strategies that they are going to be adopting in the future. So those were the two parts of the analysis that we did. Next slide, please. The main finding that came out was that the sale of highly processed products is growing in the Philippines. So the slide shows that for nearly all the products, that's actually not all of the subcategories, but I just chose the most important. There is a substantial increase in sales between 2014 and 2019. There were a couple of exceptions. You see at the bottom, juices and concentrates, but the vast majority, we're seeing an increase in sales. Next slide, please. That's also true for the increase in transactions in fast food outlets in particular. So between 2012 and 2017, there was a 37% increase in the number of transactions. And the majority of those, 58% of transactions in 2017 were transactions for burgers, i.e. it's the sale of burgers to people in the Philippines. Next slide, please. The second major finding, and this echoes with what Georgina was just presenting earlier, was that children and young people are deliberately targeted by companies, and they use all sorts of strategies to attract children to buy their products. For example, cartoons on packaging. Another strategy is to provide opportunities to win grand prizes. If you buy this product, then you can enter into a grand prize, for example, to go and visit a movie set for a popular movie, which they know is particularly popular with children. Another method to attract children is innovation, lots of new types of flavors and products like the bubble tea and different types of teas, which are particularly attractive to children and adolescents. And finally, something which is perhaps for the older child and young person is the idea of creating Instagrammable spaces. So with food outlets, creating an ambience and an atmosphere which is good for people to take pictures, to do selfies, and to do send their Instagrams. Next slide, please. The next finding is that there is some demand for healthier products among the Filipino population. And companies are already responding to this by modifying their product range and the kinds of products that they are selling to respond to this demand. However, much of this is actually unhealthy food dressed up in healthy words. So lots of these products actually remain unhealthy. And I've just put two examples in the box. For example, a type with water, bottled water is becoming more popular as a replacement to carbonated drinks. But what we're seeing the companies doing is actually producing what they call water, but it's flavored water. And it can be marketed as not too sweet and not too bland. But actually, when you look at the content, it contains around 20 grams of sugar in a 250 milliliter bottle, which is equivalent to 40% of the WHO recommendation for free sugars per day. Another example is sweet snacks, new Nutri-bars, which sound very healthy because they have lots of fiber, they're cholesterol free, and they don't have any trans fat. But again, they contain a high amount of sugar in one bar. And these are specifically being targeted at children and adolescents. Next slide, please. However, let's not be too depressed. There is some good news. And that is that in the data, we saw that government legislation has had some success in reducing sales of highly processed foods. For example, the tax on sugary drinks that was brought in 2018, after that, there was a dip in sales of soft drinks and particularly carbonated drinks. Unfortunately, over the whole period from 2014 to 2019, that dip isn't apparent, but it did show that there was some kind of impact on the sale of those drinks. A second example is the policy and guidelines that have been brought in on trying to prevent the sale and promotion of unhealthy food and drink in schools, which has been translated into ordinances in certain local authorities. And Euromonitor International report that this is seen as a threat by the industry and that they have therefore suffered reduced markets for some types of sweet and savoury snacks. So it is having some impact on the market. Next slide, please. So just to end, there are some recommendations which clearly came out from the study, and this is that the Philippines still needs to go further in introducing strong and comprehensive regulations to control the sale and marketing of highly processed foods to children and adolescents. There are 6 particular recommendations. First of all, to strengthen the national legislation on the marketing of breast milk substitutes and to promote breastfeeding, to introduce clear front of pack labeling, which indicates to people where a product is high in sugar, salt or fat, based on WHO recommendations. Thirdly, to really support communities and children in particular to understand what healthy eating means and to therefore build demand, continue to build demand for healthier products. Fourthly, to have very strict control on the marketing of unhealthy foods to children, including through digital marketing. So again, linking in with Georgina's presentation. Fifthly, menu labeling to ensure that that's in place so that people know if they have this burger and chips and drink exactly what they're actually putting into their children in terms of calories, fat, sugar and salt. And finally, to ensure that policy and regulation is done independently of the food and beverage industry. That doesn't mean the food and beverage industry are not consulted, but that they are not part of that policy making process. They have a different agenda, and it's very important that they are not part of government policy development. Thank you very much, and for giving me the time to speak today. Over to you, Gab.
Thank you, Ms. Fiona Watson, for that very insightful presentation. So again, we want to reiterate that even on the household level, it's very important that we build a healthy food environment for our children, because these highly processed foods will not be able to provide our children all of the nutrients that they need. So again, we want to make sure that we are providing our children variety of foods with good balance, and we also want them to at least eat in moderation so we can move them to the lighter side. So I am sure that everyone here who has tuned into today's webinar is having a great morning, especially after hearing those wonderful presentations from our speakers. We will have a quick 10-minute break to relax and re-energize and do some movements. And with that, we will be flashing videos promoting the first 1,000 days of life and healthy diet and exercise from the National Nutrition Council and Pateros LGU. You may want to stand up and follow the dance moves, or maybe just sing along to your heart desires. So we will be back after 10 minutes.
There, mga mommy, let's go for healthy pregnancy. Tamang pagkain ng dapat para malusog kayo ni baby. Remember, mga nanay, breastfeeding malaking bagay. Ito'y ipagpatuloy kahit na over 2 years old. Tamang nutrisyon, no forget, yan ang tamang solusyon. I like it, laking 1, oh, 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 yan ang tamang paraan. Laking tamang nutrisyon, no forget, yan ang tamang solusyon. I like it, laking 1, oh, 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 yan ang tamang paraan. Laking 1,000. Ang iyong little girl or boy, sustansya'y dapat puno. Susi sa tamang paglaki, go grow glow food na handa mo. First 1,000 days importante, healthy eating para kampante. Paghandaan nutrition ni baby, makinig sa sinasabi. Tamang nutrisyon, don't forget, yan ang tamang solusyon. I like it, laking 1,000, yan ang tamang paraan. Laking tamang nutrisyon, don't forget, yan ang tamang solusyon. I like it, laking 1,000, yan ang tamang paraan. Laking 1,000, yan ang tamang paraan. Laking 1,000.
Okay. Um, diba? Ang gaganda po ng ating videos and hopefully ganitong klaseng mga videos ang makita natin na ina-advertise para naman ma-promote natin ang healthy eating and physical activity. So let's proceed na po with our session. And I would like to welcome back you again, everyone. And I hope that you enjoyed our videos. And kudos to our production team ng first 1,000 days video, especially, and also to our Pateros BNSS who danced in the video. Actually, and I would like also to highlight yung message ng first 1,000 days. It is really a vital stage of someone's life. And I would like to quote our Executive Director, Dr. Apek Dayanghirang. And he said that to prevent obesity, we need to start early. That is in the first 1,000 days of life, when we could also prevent undernutrition, which could also result in obesity in later life. I hope everyone is now ready to hear the last two presentations for today's webinar. As I mentioned in the previous presentations, today's urbanization and worldwide digitalization can have a great impact on our lifestyle and food environment. We are more exposed to different types of food products through various marketing strategies, which can highly affect our food preferences and habits, especially among children. Can this increased push for marketing of unhealthy foods expose our growing children to more unhealthy food habits? Let us know what our next speaker has to say about this, as she will talk about her study on children's food habits, preferences, and recall of televised food advertisements. Let us welcome Ms. Ana Teresa Aurelio, Assistant Professor from the Institute of Human Nutrition and Food, College of Human Ecology of the University of the Philippines, Las Bañas. The floor is now yours, Ms. Ana.
Yes, good morning. I will just be sharing my screen. So I hope everybody's seeing my screen now. Let me present to you. So first and foremost, I would like to thank all the organizers for convening us and particularly and specifically tapping on food advertisements. Now, I would like to present to you my study on children's food habits, preferences, and recall of televised food advertisements. Since this is a qualitative study, let me start with a point of reflexivity here. So I am a registered nutritionist dietitian, but currently taking up my PhD in psychology in UP Diliman. So I really wanted to look into food advertisements from the lens of children. Now, as you can see here, so this is taken from the FNRI website. So trends in the prevalence of overweight for height among school children 6 to 10 years old from 2003 to 2018. Now, while global hunger remains to be a dominant public health concern among low and middle income countries, the coexistence of the obesity pandemic ushered in by the nutrition transition should not be underestimated. So you see here a steady growth in the trend, but it is constantly increasing. Now, unfortunately, the highest prevalence of overweight for height among 6 to 10 are from NCR, Calabarzon, and Central Luzon. So I was quite troubled because I am from Calabarzon. I am from Laguna. Now, what is it that the nutrition transition is trying to tell us? That urbanization, modernization, economic growth, and globalization have led to a shift in dietary patterns. Now, diets primarily composed of complex carbohydrates and fiber-rich food turned into higher proportions of saturated fat, sugar, animal products, cholesterol, sweeteners, and as mentioned earlier, processed and packaged food. Now, there have been several studies indicating that this dietary shift brought with it nutrition-related NCDs or non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and the metabolic syndrome. Now, along with it is also a change in lifestyle, especially in developing countries like ours, characterized by reduced physical activity and preference for television viewing over outdoor activities, which has contributed to the rise in the prevalence of obesity. Now, this is based on a study by the National Council for Children's Television in 2015. It was found that majority of the children are watching television close to 3 hours per day during weekdays and 6 hours per day on weekends. So this is more than the 2 hours per day of quality programming allowed for children. So you can just imagine the spike. Now, during the pandemic, the children are spending most of their time at home. Now, still part of lifestyle because advertising, so which was mentioned by the first two presenters, has the power to shape attitude, needs, and behavior of consumers. Frequent exposure now predisposes children to its persuasive intent. Now, unfortunately, a high percentage of food advertisements across countries feature fast food, sugary and salty foods, and empty calorie snacks, which are all associated to childhood obesity when consumed without moderation. Now, when I was doing my study, now I looked into child consumer socialization, which is, according to Ward, a theory explaining the process of acquiring skills, knowledge, and attitudes relevant to their function as future consumers in the marketplace. So we say that children now are becoming active consumers. There are now studies on the pester power, or the persuasive strategies that children use among with their parents, no, so that they can encourage buying. Now, when I was planning for this research, I had the following questions in mind. What are the food preferences and food habits of children? And I wanted to hear it from the children themselves. What is the role that food ads play in influencing food preferences? And what particular food ads do children remember in the context of television programs? Now, most of the studies that I have read are experimental designs, but I wanted to try out a qualitative study design at this point because this is a preliminary study prior to my dissertation. So these questions led me to my research objective, that is to explore children's food habits, preferences, and their recall of food advertisements. And the following specific objectives: to describe the food habits and food preferences of children 6 to 7 years old and 9 to 10 years old, describe how they perceive nutrition in the context of the food that they prefer and that they typically consume, and determine if recalled food advertisements reflect the food preferred and those which are typically consumed. Why did I separate those foods preferred and typically consumed? Because you know that children have limited autonomy. So what we're trying to say is that when they are at home, mostly, so it was assumed that perhaps parents still have the control over the types of food that they eat. So maybe they don't prefer it, but it is typically consumed because it is available in the household. Now, a qualitative study was conducted using the descriptive approach, semi-structured interview method, because the participants were children. A method that facilitates independent thinking was found most applicable, thus qualitative. Now, participants were 10 grade 1 pupils, that's why it's 6 to 7, because some of them are already 7 years old, and 10 grade 4 pupils, 9 to 10 years old, with equal proportions of males and females. The age groups were identified based on Piaget's theory of cognitive development, as the difference in cognitive abilities were deemed relevant in understanding food advertisements and recall, because studies also showed that children 4 to 6 years old do not still have the cognitive ability to differentiate television programming from food advertisements. So in other words, they watch television as if everything is part of the television program. So I was very specific with the age group. And the household should own at least one television set, and children were allowed to watch television. Informed consent of parents and assent of the child were sought, and the interviews were audio recorded and transcribed. So that makes 20 verbatim transcriptions for a total of 8.3 hours audio recording. Now, coding and thematic analysis were done using in vivo, and the television programs and food advertisements were validated. So I needed to watch again the commercials or the food advertisements that they have mentioned and those TV programs to make sure that, one, it is true, because we know that children would tend to have false memories and it is carried over not even until school age, and that I would want to know if indeed this is a food ad. Now, the profile of participants is quite comparable. So the household size for most of the 6-year-olds are 3 and 5, and for the older age group, it is 5. Majority of the mothers are housewives for the younger age group, and for the older age group, it would be half of the mothers, and all fathers were employed. Now, this is a typical day's fare. Now, just to show you that children eat at least 3 times a day. Snacks were either eaten in school as baon or eaten at home. Home cooked food or luto, so that's why it's in quote unquote luto. So this is how they term their home cooked food or lutong bahay. And the snacks, usually plain bread and sandwich. Now, a salient difference between the younger and the older age group is that younger children drink milk for breakfast, while older children have more variety of food items available for them, like sandwiches, and as mentioned by Fiona earlier, fries and burger as snacks, and processed food for lunch and dinner. Now, the lighter shade here shows the 9 to 10 age group, and the darker shade shows the 6 to 7 age group. So that shows the food frequently consumed according to meal opportunity. So we see here that processed foods such as hot dog, ham, meatloaf, and instant pancit canton, these are the food items as mentioned by the children, was higher among children 9 to 10 years old for lunch and dinner. The older children were able to recall more variants of dishes, including vegetables such as ginataang gulay, chop suey, and bulanglang. With greater autonomy, older children consume packaged snacks and fast food as snacks, while more children, 8 out of 10, consume milk at least once a day for the younger children, while it was only 3 out of 10 for the older age group. So that was what I have mentioned earlier on consuming milk. In addition to water, other types of beverages consumed were sugar sweetened, such as orange juice and chocolate flavored drink. In terms of snacks frequently consumed in the school canteen or could be brought from home, most of the snacks in school or baon consumed by children were packaged snacks, commonly sweet biscuits and crackers for both age groups. Well, this can be explained, no, because this is bought from the school canteen. The allowance allotted for food among the younger age group is ranging from 5 pesos to 25 pesos, whereas for the older age group, it ranges from 15 to 50. So I did this study in a public school. So this is the range of their food allowance, which explains their consumption of packaged snacks. For older children, it is bought from the canteen, while for younger children, it is brought from home. So this is the one here on the lower portion. Sugar-sweetened beverages are sold by ladle serving in plastic cups also in the canteen. Now, in terms of children's food likes, preference for packaged snacks and sugar-sweetened beverages were more pronounced for older children than the younger ones. Now, I would think if they are buying this one anywhere near their schools, it's also because of greater autonomy and the food allowance that they have. Younger children mentioned fruits and vegetables. You can see there fruits and vegetables, but there was no specific mention among the older age group. Reasons cited were related to sensory attributes such as taste, texture, method of food preparation described as kasi may sabaw or because it's soupy or it is crispy. And the influence of older family members when they are asked, bakit mo gusto itong pagkain na nabanggit mo? And they say, kasi po kinakain po ng nanay o kinakain ni tita o ni ate. Children's food dislikes. The younger age group had more food aversions. So you can see here, reported as, the reasons reported were mabaho, hindi masarap, maanghang or mapait, and they are very particular with vegetables like okra, ampalaya, and dahon ng sili or chili leaves. They also mentioned health-related reasons. No? They dislike the food because hindi ito makakabuti or because nagkakasakit. Processed food or like junk food and candies. their perceived food composition, as in hot dog and kikiam. Later on, I'll show you some exceptional quotes on this one. Frequency of consumption, nagsasawa na po ako. So they're tired of eating the same kind of food every day and associated to an experience, for example, turmeric as medicine. So if they associate it with medicine, then they don't like that food item. So here are some exceptional quotes. Nagkasakit po kasi ako dati ng UTI at pneumonia from soft drinks. Nagkasakit po ako, na ospital po ako, diabetes po from pineapple juice. Yung hotdog daw, gawa lang daw po yun sa bulate. Kaya daw po siya pula. So that's why it's red. It's made out of worms, which they saw in YouTube. So I was not able to validate this one, but relying on the quote of the child, nakakabulati po, kikiam. Younger children's perception of nutrition. So here are the food examples cited. Now, these are the coding categories that I use. Food examples, association. So when I ask them, ano ba yung sa tingin mong mga pagkain na nutritious? And automatically they say fruits, vegetables, gatas, tinapay, patatas. Okay. In terms of physiologic need, breakfast cereals can satisfy hunger, okay, or nakakabusog, health reasons, and information from caregivers. Sabi po kasi ni. And all of them learn from their parents, others from siblings, grandmother, and older peers. Now, here's another exceptional quote. Yung itlog sa tingin mo masustansya. Opo, paano mo nasabing masustansya? Kasi po, nakikita ko po sa TV lagi. Now, bakit sa tingin mo di siya masustansya kahit masarap siya? So, because every time they mention food items, we ask, sa tingin mo ba masustansya? Or do you think is it nutritious? Leche flan as preferred food. Child pauses for a long time. Now, the child was whispering, pwedeng mamatay. Or I can die. Older children's perception of nutrition, health, again, food safety. This is surprising that some of the children mention food safety when referring to fast food. No, they say that it is nutritious because the food is clean. Nutrient composition as a source of vitamins and minerals. And if they say na okay lang naman po, basta po, wag sosobra, or those in moderation. Now, how about recall of food advertisements? So the total number of food ads recalled, which was validated. So I watched the commercials, the food advertisements, and the programs that they have mentioned. From the age group 6 to 7, it's 18. From the age group 9 to 10, it's 27. So there's more recall among the older age group, which is not surprising because of, again, going back to their cognitive ability. Preferred and frequently eaten food with recalled ad. So I matched them. So if they have mentioned the ad and if they have mentioned the food item, and surprisingly, it's equal among the two age groups. Food ad recalled with TV program, because again, I asked in the context of TV programs, because again, I am assuming that the younger age group cannot yet identify food ads. So 6% from the younger, 15%, so higher from the older age group. And the salient features recalled, storyline or quoted script, and from those older age group, product description, celebrity endorser, and the G. So these are what they remember or they recall from the advertisements. So here are some quotes. So what is salient for the younger children? They are better at recalling those that associate the product with fun or appeals to the emotion. They cannot specifically mention the product. That's why I had a hard time tracking all of those food ads. No, I'll just leave the guessing up to you which product or brand this belongs to. Hinabol po niya yung baka. Nandun po sila sa boat, naging artista siya. Nagtumbling, nagpa-picture siya, hinalikan ni mommy. Nag-iikot-ikot po, nagdikit sila. So these are all action verbs. And you see how the impressions that all of these food ads make, no, in terms of their storyline. But the older age group are better at recalling product relevant information. kumakain ng, they have a mention of the brand. Madami pong flavor, so they have recall of the flavors. Yung gatas po na choco milk, chicken po, tapos may spaghetti. This is again pertaining directly to the product, not the storyline. Yung giniling na may mushroom, yung the brand of the chocolate, which is color brown, which is an important characteristic or attribute of the food product that they have watched. Yung chocolate po na dinidrizzle. So what are I'm towards the end of my presentation. So what are the key findings? Now, after all of these conversations with the children, so I have deduced from my categories that food preference and perception on nutrition can be determined by biological, meaning to say satiety and sensory, social by caregivers and school, economic, education and food allowance, physical in terms of accessibility at home and school, and cultural or food belief aspects. Because food preference is governed by internal controls, knowledge on nutrition does not guarantee informed food choice. Children from both age groups are able to recognize that some of their disliked food are actually nutritious. Autonomy and a more accommodative approach among parents diversify food preference. Now, what about children's cognitive abilities? Education and cognitive ability of children enable them to make sense of food attributes, including nutrition, as well as those from food advertisements. Recall of food ads is facilitated by age-dependent information processing, making salient features retrievable from memory among older children. And by mere exposure, watching food ads creates a priming effect that contribute to familiarity that enable easier recall. In terms of child socialization, which I think is equally important, social learning enable knowledge transfer and create shared experiences that reinforce or deter inherent liking for food, whether it be through parents, peers, school, and the media. Family remains to be a relevant source of information. Children believe family members, especially their parents. Modeling facilitates food consumption as the children are more likely to eat what they see being eaten by adults. Now, some implications for future research. Family communication and parenting styles can be explored to describe how family structures influence household decision making when it comes to food, because we want to know how much and to what extent is the power of children. Now, when they do their pester power, that's what experts say or call those persuasive strategies. Quantitative, correlational, and experimental research designs may be used, and it is recommended that parent-child dyads be interviewed to validate the self-reports, and other sites may be further explored to describe patterns across various contexts, because this study was conducted in 2018 in Laguna. So with that, I would like to extend my gratitude to my professor, co-author, and research mentor from the Department of Psychology at UP Diliman, Professor J.A. Yakat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Aurelio, for sharing your study with us and for that very excellent presentation. Actually, it's really good that we go deeper or study more on the behavior of our children towards food, on how these affect their food preferences, their choices, and then become their habits. Aside from the environment, what the media is feeding to our children, actually, yung talagang makokontrol agad natin on the first line ay yung sa bahay mismo. So, mahalaga yung role ng ating mga magulang, ng mga kasama sa bahay in guiding our children or in imparting to them what are healthy and what to eat in moderate or what to eat in lesser amount. Ms. Arnan Sazon from our chat box mentioned that dapat daw stress out yung importance nga daw ng parents' guidance in the food choice and food preparations. And again, thank you po, Prof. Aurelio. Over to you, Gab.
Thank you, Ms. Cathy and Ms. Anna. So we are now down for our last presentation today. So indeed, we are facing great challenges in today's modernization as a developing country. Fast foods are now accessible, and its affordability and delectable taste can be an easy choice to homemakers when pressed for time. especially for working moms after a busy day at work, or maybe coming from a Zoom webinar like what we are having now. So advertising also makes their product more and more enticing to the eyes of children. Now, other countries have now adopted caloric labeling in their menus in the hopes of improving the population's food choices. In the Philippines, we are hopeful to follow suit as a bill has been filed in Congress towards this end. Our last but not the least speaker for today will share a feasibility study on introducing caloric labeling on menus of food service establishments. She is a multi-awarded researcher and currently a project coordinator for the Nutritionist Dietitians Association of the Philippines Foundation. We are honored to have Dr. Demetria Bonga. The study will be presented by Dr. Demi, will be introduced by Ms. Cecilia Pastores, Food Security and Nutrition Specialist of Food Agriculture Organization. Ms. Pastores and Dr. Demi, the floor is yours.
Okay. First of all, good morning to everyone, and I would like to I would like to take this opportunity, of course, to in behalf of FAO to thank the National Nutrition Council and of course you for organizing this webinar. And indeed the problem of obesity and its consequences should be a concern and must be addressed. And with that, FAO has committed to take part also in addressing the non-communicable diseases or NCDs through ensuring the consumption of healthy diet. So this project we did with ENDAP is just one of FAO's regional support to making fast food healthier and thereby contributing to changing power dynamics. So along with the countries like Vietnam and Samoa, who also conducted their own studies related to fast food. And through this project, we hope to provide some recommendations that will be useful and relevant to addressing obesity and NCDs. And as advocated by our own director, General Q Dong-yu, the food industry and businesses have a critical role in achieving food security and nutrition as they influence the production, processing, retail, and marketing of the food that we eat. So the food industry can help transform agriculture and food systems for better environmental, social, and economic outcomes. And hence, we see this as an opportunity to look at the readiness of our fast food establishments to take part in advocating for healthier options. So with that, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Bonga to present our study on caloric labeling in fast food establishments. So over to you, ma'am.
Okay.
Let me share.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Can you hear me? Am I in?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear
Dr.
you.
Demi.
Okay, fine. Good morning, everyone. Allow me to give you a brief description of the small study that we conducted through the collaboration of ENDAP Foundation and FAO. Okay, just a little background. So modifiable behavior such as tobacco use, physical inactivity, unhealthy diet, and excessive consumption of alcohol increase the risk of NCDs. These are further aggravated with being overweight or obese and other metabolic conditions such as having high blood pressure, abnormal blood lipids, and increased blood glucose. Next slide, please. So, fast foods are continually patronized by people due to the convenience of acquiring them and affordability. Fast foods have been found to be energy dense, low in micronutrients and fiber, and high in simple sugar, sodium, and saturated fats, based on our study in 2014 by Cabigas et al. Fast food establishments, I think this is the preferred term by fast food stores, can promote a healthy diet among consumers through information about the calorie density or content of food items offered so people can make informed and good choices. Okay. Next, please. Now, let me quote some studies, not done here, but in US and Canada, because we don't have a policy on menu or calorie labeling yet. So these studies, which reviewed 38 studies, found the following barriers to the implementation of calorie label usage among consumers. So one, consumers' desire for some high-calorie meals in spite of their calorie content. Familiarity with menus, often not consulting the menus while waiting to order the food. Intentions to burn off the consumed calories later via physical activity. Next. Okay, more consumer barriers, lack of nutrition knowledge, low expectation of nutritional quality, sales promotions as reason for lack of usage of calorie labels. Often the menu display is confusing. Also, women more than men use nutrition information. Those aged 18 to 24 compared to other age groups use nutrition information when ordering foods. Okay, so some problems with calorie labeling. Calorie counts often given for entire meals instead of individual food items. I showed one type of label which give you the value for the whole meal but not for individual items in the menu. Also, there are varying presentation formats currently used. For example, traffic lights, healthy logos, color coding, physical activity equivalents. Unlike in our Sangkap Pinoy, for example, there is just one type of logo used to indicate what fortificant has been added to food. Also, often the label is too crowded and difficult to read, or the menu board is too crowded and difficult to read. So a more simplified and more direct way of highlighting healthy foods may be a better way to inform consumers. Okay, next. On presentation of calorie labels. Okay, we should avoid confusing nature of calorie ranges listed from menu items. So we don't know if it is the price or if it's the calorie value. Choose better size and placement of calorie information. Next, information often not sufficient for the average consumer to effectively use it. Next. Okay, these are some recommendations prior to mandatory calorie labeling, if ever it is adopted in a country. First, consider some novel ways of presenting nutrition information. Daily calorie recommendation can be a beneficial reminder to those with low nutrition knowledge or low understanding of the meaning of calories. Nutrition information should be presented clearly and focus on targeted subgroups that may be affected differentially by nutrition policies. So men versus women, and also among age groups. Okay, next, please. All right, so this is a study that we conducted on calorie labeling. The objectives are, first, to promote healthy food choices through caloric labeling in fast food establishments. Specifically, the study aims to advocate for the support of fast food establishments in enabling consumers adopt a healthy diet through calorie labeling of food products toward addressing the problem of non-communicable diseases. Also, in consultation with stakeholders, proposed a strategy for introducing calorie labeling in fast food establishments. And last, to propose a feasible implementation plan, including a monitoring scheme for adoption by local government units that may be used as basis for a local ordinance. Okay, next, please. So this is the workflow. First, we prepared a profile of FSCs. Then there was an initial forum with FSC officials, marketing managers, and R&D officials. Then we had key informant interviews. We had an online survey and FGD with professionals. And the information or findings of all of this data collection were put into the crafting of an implementation plan on how to introduce calorie labeling. Okay, next, please. All right. In the selection of FSEs, the food service establishments were invited to be included in the study were those with widespread outlets or presence in various parts of the country, hence serving a large number and a variety of clientele, and those which serve set meals or standardized food items provided by a commissary, indicating little or no variability in the calorie content of foods. The recipe has to be standardized because it's difficult to make a label when the formulation varies. Okay, next. Next, please. Okay. Now, results of the profile show that all the FSEs indeed draw their food supplies from their commissary or regular suppliers for standard quality. Most products offered are inclined to satisfy the sensorial palate of consumers more than their nutritional needs. And only a few FSEs had launched calorie and or nutrient labeling on their menu boards or menu cards, but this is not in the Philippines, okay? Some of these FSEs are multinational. Okay, in the consultative forum, some concerns that were expressed by the food service establishments were the consumer's understanding of the readiness for calorie labeling, the availability of adequate and reliable food laboratories that can do all the food analysis once all the FSEs submit their food items for analysis. And they expect leveling the playing field among all fast food producers, including convenience stores selling ready-to-eat meals. Okay, next, please. In the focus group discussion, we had an FGD with nutrition professionals, shown here in the picture. And these are some of the recommendations or suggestions they gave for calorie labeling to be successful. First, make calorie labeling mandatory through legislation. Launch a massive information campaign to enhance public awareness about calorie labeling or the public about calorie labeling. LGU should monitor compliance of food service establishments in their areas. And the school should also educate students about calories and the importance of calorie labels in food choices. Next, please. Now, on the key informant interview done with the DepEd official, she was asked whether there were already policies and programs that are being implemented by DepEd and how can the school promote calorie labeling. Okay, DepEd, as mentioned previously, has already issued Administrative Order number 13 that lists what types of foods may be sold or served in school canteens. It bans the sale of soft drinks, foods high in fat, sugar, and salt. Health and nutrition concepts, according to the informant, are already embedded in the curriculum of K-12, but there is a need for appropriate IEC materials and proper training of teachers on how to communicate or disseminate the information in the classroom. Next, schools can also support calorie labeling initiatives of food service establishments by partnering with LGUs and PTAs, as well as other community stakeholders in enforcing calorie labeling in restaurants, especially those patronized by school children. The need for legislation to give this initiative legal character with corresponding sanctions or incentives to ensure compliance by food service establishments was also suggested. Next, please. All right, instead of the workshop, consultative workshop, due to the pandemic, we conducted an online survey with FSE officers. And according to them, these are their expectations. The government should enact and enforce a law mandating calorie labeling in all FSEs. Undertake a strong advocacy campaign with participation of media to promote its implication. Establish more or accredit existing food laboratories to undertake food analysis. Next, please. Next. How about the schools? FSEs expect the schools to inculcate among learners at all levels the role of diet in the prevention of NCDs and provide the teachers with appropriate modules for them to disseminate the concept of calories and how to apply this in their food choices. How about the mass media? Promote consumer awareness about calorie labeling and motivate FSEs to sustainably implement it. Utilize varied information communication platforms, such as those mentioned by previous speakers, I suppose, that can cater to the different target groups. Next, the food service establishments should also be ready to invest the necessary resources. For example, they should invest in the analysis of their food products, for those who have not done it yet, to hire the needed personnel to implement the program, including, as was mentioned, nutrition experts who can help them with the program, and to reconfigure the menu boards and menu lists to clearly display labels of the calorie information to guide consumers. Okay, next. Okay, in the interest of time, I will just show a couple of slides. So what is our proposed implementation plan for introducing calorie labeling in food service establishments? Okay, the scope and coverage, calorie labeling will apply to all food service establishments or restaurants and part of a chain serving standardized foods or meals from commissary or a central location operating in all regions of the country. Objective is to prepare an action plan for the effective implementation of calorie labeling in FSEs. Okay, next, please. All right. These are the implementing mechanisms. I will not elaborate them in the interest of time because we were said we have to limit our presentations. There is a need for advocacy for the enactment of a law or legal mandate requiring calorie labeling. At present, there are 2 House bills which are sponsored by 2 congressmen, requiring all food service establishments and restaurants to put nutrition labeling, that is their word, in the menus. Next, there is need for a coordination and networking among stakeholders. Third, there should be continuous social mobilization by all partners for the sustainability of the program once it is launched. And finally, there should be some scheme for monitoring and evaluation whether calorie labeling is indeed being implemented by food service establishments, especially at the local level. I guess that's about all. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Ademi, for that presentation. No? And what I got from your presentation is again the message that we should work together to enable the population to choose a healthier food, choose healthier food choices and the lifestyle. Because most of the time people choose taste over health. And with this caloric labeling, on a personal level, the higher the calories that they may see what they're ordering, the more that they will go for the lower calorie ones. So it's one way for us to, as well help them in choosing maybe at least for now lower caloric food. So and also as mentioned in the chat, by one of our participants, Arnan Sazon, nutrient calorie labeling should be posted in fast foods monitored by R&Ds. So this is also one way for us to strengthen the presence of nutritionist dietitian in the food service industry. So thank you, Dr. Demi, for that presentation. We will now move on to the open forum. Ms. Cathy, over to you.
Okay, we are now opening the floor for questions or comments or for those who would like to share their insights and takeaways on today's topics. So if you have any, you may raise your hand using the raise hand function. And then we can unmute your microphone so you can speak directly to our speakers if you have any question to them.
But we already have a few questions posted on the Q&A box and also from the chat. I think, Ms. Cathy, you would like to read on the first question that we've listed.
Okay, Gab. For a while. Here's a question from, I'm sorry, I forgot to get his or her name. Well, ang tanong niya is, tanong ko lang po if there is a particular law passed by the Philippine government to limit the advertisement of unhealthy foods in the social media po. Thank you.
And so maybe anyone from our panelists would be able to answer this question.
Hello.
So, go
Yeah.
ahead, po, Ms. George.
Yeah. Actually, that's the reason kung bakit kami nagsa-study ngayon, no? Kasi gusto namin mag-introduce ng ganyang klaseng legislation. Ang pagkaalam ko lang there are different policies by private sector companies who declare that they don't advertise to people under 13 years old, mga ganon. But then they are all internal policies. There is no actual law that that already regulates the advertising and marketing on digital platforms right now.
Okay, thank you po, Miss George. So hopefully, nasagot naman po yung tanong. And we have another question regarding the need for the involvement of food industries. How do we balance interest of regulatory and food industries as a whole?
So this question is basically referring to the food industry as well. No, how
Yes,
how can they in the involvement balance the interest, or basically from the regulatory to the food industry as well. Anyone from our panelists would like to answer the question?
Oh, hello, it's Fiona Watson here. Can I answer that question, or did somebody else want to come in?
Go ahead, Ms. Watson.
Yes, I think the question is what role does the food and beverage industry play? How can they be involved in improving diets? Have I understood that right, Gab?
Yes, Ms. Fiona.
Yeah, so I think, to repeat what I said in the presentation, that legislation, regulation, it has to be done independently of financial interests. And the food and beverage industry has a very strong financial interest in selling particular products. So they cannot be at the table when policy and legislation is developed. I think that's very, very clear. It's certainly set out in WHO guidelines and others. And it's an international thing. It's not just for the Philippines or this region. However, I do think that it's important that the food and beverage industry have lots of warning when legislation is going to be brought into place, so that they can prepare themselves for that introduction, and that there is consultation as to how it is best to bring in legislation and what that means for the industry. So they do play a very strong role. The other thing I wanted to note was the food and beverage industry. That's a very large group of people. So from the manufacturers all the way up to retailers. And they, again, have different interests. At the retail end, the people, the shop owners, the stall owners, the fast food outlets, I think that there is quite a lot more opportunity to work with those retailers to try to improve the products that they are selling. As long as they're not losing money, then there are certainly things that they can do to improve the products. So, for example, moving soft drinks and sweets away from the counter where you pay, and putting other products like bottled water, which doesn't have sugar in it, may mean that those shops don't lose money, but they are actually able to offer healthier choices. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Watson, for answering that question. So again, from the manufacturing to the retail end, and basically on the retail side, we often see these snacks or these small snacks as we are about to check out of the store. So that's also one thing that they do in order for consumers to pick up these processed foods as well. So I hope that Ms. Fiona was able to answer that question. So we actually have a question here from Professor Aurelio from the Facebook stream posted by Ms. Josefa Nava. So regarding Ms. Aurelio's research, could she mention also when data were collected? If data were collected prior to lockdown, would she say that the findings would probably be also true during the lockdown? Ms. Anna?
Um, yes, hi. Thank you for that question. The study was conducted in 2018, so that was prior pandemic. I would think that because the focus of my study is more on televised food ads, so I would think that the variations in the results would be more leaning towards the type of media, one, where the food ads are released or watched, and two, because frequency of exposure, the mere effect, the mere exposure effect tells us that the more we are exposed to the food ads, the more we are likely to consume what we watch. So I would think that if the frequency post pandemic would be affected and the type of media used for airing food ads, then definitely there would be an effect. I would assume that there would be a difference in the results of the qualitative study post or in the new normal.
Thank you, Professor Aurelio. There's actually one comment here as well from Ms. Fiona Watson. Again, I think this is also regarding your presentation. Also, Anna found that most meals are home cooked. What do we know about the healthiness of meals cooked at home, and what can be done to encourage healthy home cooking? Ms. Anna?
Maybe I would think that healthiness is like a broad concept right now, but what I would say is that it's still one dish meal. So what we call a composition of meat, portions of meat, vegetables, soup all together. But what would be more interesting to learn about is the type of flavorings that they use. Because if I am after sugary, if I am after savory, am I looking into flavorings which are natural, no, which has less preservatives? So so I would think that should be a balance. Like one is composition and the other one is the flavorings that we use. Because again, going back to the study, the sensory attribute is one salient result, is one salient factor in children's food preferences. So if we acquaint them with all of these preservatives and unnatural flavors, they are more likely when they grow up to look for all of those seasonings and to look for all of those flavors altogether, not just food composition and not just the type of food component that we put into the meals. I think that's an opportunity for another research to look into the composition of home cooked meals. So thank you very much for that question.
Right, thank you, Ms. Aurelio. So again, still going back to that healthy food environment that we should push for, starting from the household level. Parents, we want them to, there are the access to food of children. So we want them to have to give them that experience that they should always choose the healthier food option, so our children will be more used to it. So Ms. Kathy, any other questions from our participants that you would like to raise to our speakers?
Actually, I would like to speak up this comment from one of our participants about marketing naman. Ang sabi niya is, as I have observed lang po, as we are promoting exclusive breastfeeding, on infant formula milk brands advertisement, the warning on the use of this type of milk, they included in their advertisement, sobrang bilis daw at saka hindi maintindihan. Naka-fast forward pa. Actually, oo, napapansin ko to sa mga commercials. And, do you have any insights po or comments on this from our speakers?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I have an insight into that because this end tag, it's called an end tag kasi I think 2-second lang or 3-second ang binibigay nila dyan sa commercial sa ating end tag on this this product is not used for breast milk, yung ganong statement. And it's the reason why they come out with that is because it's regulation. No, the law dictates that they should post this message in all their advertising, but then the law does not specify the amount of the way it's going to be said in a way that is going to be understood by the general public. So I know that there's a English and a Tagalog version of this NTAG, which is required by law, but the way that it is required now is not as understandable to the general public. So I think it goes back to regulation and making the private sector comply exactly with regulations that are literally going to be understandable by the general public. So hindi naiintindihan kasi yun yung sinasabi natin gawin ng mga kumpanya. So kung palitan natin yung wording ng mga ng sinasabi nila, baka mas maintindihan. Kasi sila, they will be forced to comply with whatever regulation dictates.
And
Yun.
maybe if we have crafted, if we will be able to craft a national policy regulating on this marketing and advertisement, ma-regulate natin or mababago natin itong mode of their putting these warnings on their advertisements.
Meron naman regulations, meron tayong milk code eh. So talagang pero lumulusot sila dahil sa mga loopholes na nakikita nila sa code. So kailangan isara natin lahat ng butas para hindi sila makalusot.
Thank you po, Ms. George. Apo.
Yeah. And even to add to that, no, kaya nga palaging at the end, breast milk is best for babies up to 2 years. So and that basically highlights as well to our mothers. No, tama naman, it's the first 1,000 days of life, the first 2 years, it's the best for babies.
Yes,
So,
but I'll just say, Gab, that we have been using that line for so long na nagiging wallpaper na siya. Wala na siyang ibig sabihin sa mga nakikinig. So, I mean, just to look at it from a marketing perspective, we need to energize our own regulatory frameworks para yung general public will sit up and take notice again of this information that we have been giving forever. So maybe we can also, there are opportunities for us, for those who control the behavior of private sector to capitalize on the resources that they have so that we can communicate clearly and more effectively to the general public.
thank you, Ms. George, for adding to that. So, Ms. Cathy, on your side.
Okay, we have another question. It says, how do we address this problem sa mga pamilyang limitado ang resources kung saan mas importante na matugunan ang kumakalam na sikmura kaysa sa tamang nutrisyon para sa mga kabataan. Mas mura pa po kasi ang mga pagkain gaya ng pansit canton and other processed foods kaysa sa gulay sa panahon ngayon. Any insights on that or comment po from our speakers again?
So I think this question, just to translate it, most people go for food because they are hungry more than they wouldn't want to eat because it's for health. So they go for survival, no? So in most of the time, these processed foods are cheap over to other products that over other products such as the Go, Grow, and the Glow, like the vegetables and other food products that are high in protein that are important for the growth of children. I think Miss Fiona can answer this. I would actually like to hear Miss Fiona answer this statement. Miss Fiona.
Okay, so I think the question was about the affordability of food, that's an incredibly important aspect when people decide what food they're going to buy. And we know that a lot of convenience and processed food is very cheap. And it keeps and it's safe. So there's a lot of good reasons why people buy processed foods. And I think that really gets to the absolute crux of where we now are globally, in that we need to really have a complete rethink of the whole food system. We need to be promoting locally produced and fresh foods and having systems which ensure that those are affordable rather than pushing these unhealthy foods. So it's a very big question. It is a more food systems question than just a food environment. I do think, though, that although affordability is incredibly important for a lot of people, it's not only that. That's not the only factor that affects what people buy. We've heard a lot about how successful advertising is because they're pushing fun and family and being friends in their advertising. And just to pick up on George's point earlier, I think people in the public health sector who want to be rethinking our messages have to take that on board. Instead of talking about it's healthy, it's good for you, we need to be using the same language that the advertisers are using, that actually, eating fresh food is fun and it can promote friendships, and just refreshing our own messages. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Watson. And any from our other speakers would like to also add to Miss Fiona?
And Gab and Kathy, I'd like to add. I agree with Fiona's answer that actually we should also do our own counter marketing to address the problems with how the marketing targets the children. But I'd like to pick up on one point that she mentioned earlier about the food system. So actually, I think we need to give subsidies to healthier products so that it is more affordable for the people. One example I'd like to give is brown rice. Brown rice is healthier. You actually need to process it less than you process white rice. So the cost of production should be less. But it's being marketed, it's being sold at a higher price because it's catering to a niche market, because it's healthy. So that's why there's an added price to it. But actually, you should be able to sell brown rice at a lower price than white rice. So I think we should also look into these types of products that are healthier and see how we can give subsidies for these products.
Thank you, Dr. Aina.
Thanks.
And also, just to add to that, regarding the high prices of vegetables, there are also programs that provide seeds to homemakers so they can plant these seeds and grow vegetables so they can eat. So backyard gardening, urban gardening, so that's also one thing that we should look into and promote more. So these foods are more readily available. So there's actually a question here that I would like to raise as well to our speakers by Ms. Cecilia Akuin. And it's actually an interesting question. How can healthier food choices be made more available and affordable and just as appealing to children? If children see their parents eating non-healthy foods, how can any regulation convince them not to consume these foods?
Okay, how do I answer this one? Okay, may I address this?
Go ahead, Dr. Demi. Go ahead, po.
Okay. In fact, we don't have time. In the implementation plan that we have, under coordination and networking, we have there enumerated the various agencies that can perform their roles and responsibilities to support the calorie labeling. For one, I was saying, like, the Department of Agriculture should promote more and support more farmers to produce fruits and vegetables to make the supply more abundant and therefore bring down the prices. During pandemic, the prices of vegetables and fruits went overboard, isn't it? 60% for vegetables, 50% for fruits. Now, people don't buy those vegetables, but if they are available, if they are abundant, then people will choose them. But of course, what is important is the education of our consumers, beginning with the home. I didn't have a chance to show the other slides, but in the study they made in other countries, when parents go to the fast food together with the children, and the parents were aware about calorie labeling, they chose 126 calories lower for their children. Okay, and for those who are aware about calorie usage, their intended ordering, they ordered more healthy choices or less calories than what they ordinarily order. So there are already some studies abroad, but we don't have it here. So as you mentioned about planting, okay, yung plantitos, plantitas ngayon, instead of growing flowering blooms, maybe we should grow vegetables even in pots, even in tin cans and so on. It can be done. Pepper can grow in less than 1 month, your tomatoes in less than 3 months, and so on. But let us think about the very, very poor, where there's hardly a space where they can plant, or there is no sun that can go through. It's still possible, because I know in one barangay here in Quezon City, the barangay was able to harness community participation by utilizing backyards that are not being used by owners, isn't it? Kasi mas may tax ngayon pag hindi ginagamit ang yards. So if you use that with permission of the owner, you can use that as community vegetable gardens, isn't it? I think those are little things, but again, education of the public. Pag nagugutom tayo, the cheaper, like that's why fast foods cater, they said, to C, D, and E. They serve foods which are affordable and cater to the tastes. Yung malasa, di ba? So how do we make some of the other foods have that same characteristic as was mentioned before? And they can also cater to our consumers, especially the younger children, which I think is the focus of all of this discussion today.
Thank you, Dr. Demi, for answering that question. As I can see from the Q&A, there's a lot of questions regarding your presentation, Doc. So I'll just summarize it into one. Can you, with regards to the caloric labeling, of course, what's next would be what we should look into next would be the monitoring and the evaluation of this, if ever nga na maging law siya or maging passed siya as a law. What would be the strategies that you would like to maybe share with regards to the M&Es of caloric labeling?
Okay. The first of all, I mentioned what we thought of was giving the LGUs more power and responsibility for monitoring, because the FSEs are given permits or license to operate by the LGU. Therefore, the LGU has the oversight function over the FSEs. Okay. Next, it should assign an official from the city or municipality in charge of inspecting the FSEs to make sure that the FSEs conform to the standards and guidelines. Kasi doon sa law, dapat merong sa IRR, may implementing standards and guidelines that all FSEs will follow and make sure. Pwedeng yung food inspector, pero dito sa Quezon City, ang sabi namin, siguro yung Department of Health, kasi may mga nutritionists sila doon, di ba? They will be better able to evaluate whether the menus are really providing the right information. Okay. So hindi lang lahat puro stick. Meron din kaming incentives. Sabi namin, perhaps the ILG can use or add as a criterion the successful implementation of labeling in FSEs as one of those criteria in evaluating the performance of the LGU, di ba? Kasi meron silang binibigay na, anong tawag nila? Ang award for the LGU for good performance, good governance, okay? So include that as one of the criteria. Also, I was thinking NNC awards LGUs with outstanding municipalities, barangays, etc. Add also the successful implementation of calorie labeling once it is enacted as a policy in the MLP. Diba meron silang monitoring and evaluation of local level program implementation. So kasama ito, an assessment of how the food environment was improved or enhanced by implementing or monitoring the implementation of calorie labeling in FSEs. So there are some of the suggestions that we have made.
Thank you, Dr. Demi. Miss Kathy?
Yes, we have, this is the last question that we will be entertained. So this is from Miss Celestina. She is asking, do we have future plans to put paid ads on social media or YouTube advertisements to spread awareness about nutrition? First, I would like to answer on this. Being in behalf of the NNC, we have invested millions to come up with various TV productions, radio programs, as well as videos that are posted via social media in YouTube and in Facebook pages. So if you would like to check on it, please visit our Facebook page, the the National Nutrition Council official Facebook page, as well as the First 1,000 Days PH Facebook page. So those are our initiatives in part of the NNC. Also, from our stakeholders like the professional organizations, development partners are also contributing or are investing on this, and they are also available through the social media. From our speakers, do you have any addition on that regarding on that question?
So future plans. Basically, this is if food industry have advertising and marketing push, what about the spread of awareness to nutrition digitally? So anyone from our speaker maybe would like to answer? Miss George.
Well, all I can say, in addition to all the comments that we've seen, is that the campaigning on nutrition is really a very big and sustained challenge, because it's a need, and mga kalaban mo malalakas talaga. I just remembered this instance about a family who factory workers na nung nabigyan na sila ng sweldo, hindi masasarap, masustansyang pagkain ang pinili nilang bilhin. Ang binili nila ay instant noodles. Not only because it's cheaper, but because advertising has created this image around around products like that make it more emotionally satisfying and also physically satisfying for people. So that is the challenge for us, who are trying to promote nutrition. We are up against brands, unhealthy food brands that not only appeal to the physical needs of people, but also to the emotional needs of people. They sell family bonding, they sell fun, they sell love, as well as great tasting products. So we need to look at the strategies that they are using and do the same. And that is the only way that we can compete, because it is a competition between healthy foods and unhealthy foods. And to win this war, we need to steal the strategies that they are using and use them to our advantage.
Right. Thank you, Ms. George. That's very insightful. Let's use their strategies to our advantage as well in promoting the spread of nutrition and health awareness. So, ayun. Well, unfortunately, that is all the allotted time for our open forum. We now would like to ask our speakers for a few words to close. We will do so in order of presentation. Dr. Aina, maybe your last takeaways and a few words to close, please.
Okay, thank you, Gab. Thank you also to all those who attended today. I think it was really a very fruitful and engaging discussion. It was good to hear all the studies that were presented today. Siguro for the counter marketing that we're thinking of, I'd like to also share the experience of NCP in the late 70s and early 80s. I'm sure Kathy and Gab, hindi nyo na naabutan to. But there was there was a series of TV ads that NCP put out, yung ang kangkong bao, ang itlog. So there were elementary school children. There was a contest. They were asked to write poems on different nutritious foods. And then those who won the contest, they were asked to present it on stage. Tapos televise ito.
Yeah,
So, so maybe something, a similar TV campaign, aside from what we're already doing on social media, would be needed so that we can counter the very, very aggressive digital and multimedia marketing of these food safety, food service establishments and other food processed foods. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aina. How about Ms. George, your final words for our participants?
Sabihin ko lang, maraming salamat sa ating lahat na nagtatrabaho sa issue na ito. We need to all work together, and UNICEF is here really ready to support you. We are doing this research to be able to make our own contribution to the issue and move us all, help to move us all forward in battling obesity in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. George. And again, we would like to highlight the thanks for UNICEF in continuous endeavors in trying to fight all kinds of malnutrition. So, Ms. Fiona, your few words to close.
Yes, thank you. I was going to speak from a regional point of view and just congratulate the Philippines on how far you're moving forward on recognizing the problem of overweight and obesity and also bringing in legislation to do something about it. The rates here are nowhere near as high as in some other countries in the region, but actually already there's quite a momentum to do something about it. So congratulations for that. And just to end with sort of highlighting that there is a push and a pull needed. The push is to introduce effective legislation. And when I say effective, I mean legislation which is implemented, enforced and monitored. But there's also the pull, which is to build consumer demand, and particularly through not just traditional education, but all the kind of social media and new types of appealing to people to eat a healthier diet. And I think the focus on children and particularly adolescents is really important because they are our future. Thank you very much for allowing me to participate in this really interesting webinar.
Thank you, Ms. Watson.
Thank you, Ms. Watsons. May I call Prof. Aurelio on your
Yes.
final insights?
Yes, I know that we've been dealing with double burden of malnutrition, triple burden of malnutrition, and yet we have another problem now on obesity, which taxes our food system. What I would just like to say, coming from the academe, would be let us not tire to educate. I mean, not just educating consumers, parents, children, but also educating the media, educating food manufacturers, the producer side, the supplier side. And I think as consumers, we have the responsibility of creating the demand. Because if there is a demand for healthier, more nutritious food, then I think that would be something that marketers, food marketers and manufacturers would be after. So instead of waging the war, so who's winning? Is it food marketing? Is it advertisements? Is it the consumers? I think we need to collaborate. Let's learn from what is effective in their marketing strategies and put the nutrition messages there. We have to promote, we have to educate. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Aurelio. And lastly, Dr. Demi.
Okay. Good morning, and then thank you for us inviting me to participate in this webinar. It was very informative. And I think I would like to invite all the participants, organizations, and so on to help us push for a legislation, because short of that, the FSEs will not be willing, because we need to level the playing field, isn't it? We did one study before on processed foods. short of a legislation, we cannot expect food industry to toe the line. But then we also have to help promote this information. Totoo yun, lahat ng segments of the population, we have to approach, di ba? By the way, I think a couple of FSEs have already put on their menu 2 alternate choices, less caloric. Ewan ko kung napupunan yon. But you try to look at some of their menus. I think they're starting to do it because I think we're trying to push for this and they are willing to participate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bonga, and to all our speakers. And to formally wrap up the part 2 of our webinar, let us hear from the Chief of the Nutrition Information and Education Division of the National Nutrition Council, Ms. Jovi Raval, for her synthesis. Over to you, Ma'am Jovi.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Sorry. Thank you very much, Kathy. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Loud and clear po.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Before I present my synthesis, I'd like to thank everyone for participating in today's very informative webinar. So to synthesize, today's webinar focused on the food environment and the factors that affect food choices and consumption as it contributes to obesity. The topics presented today show us that the types of foods that are made available to all of us and our children are shifting towards foods that are highly processed, and that includes foods that are high in calories, salt, sugar, and fat, but low in protein, fiber, and vitamins and minerals. The food industry is a multi-billion peso industry. Household incomes are mostly spent on food. And so the industry will come up with foods that cater to taste and palate rather than health and nutrition. Marketing is used to promote these foods, and we found out that most of these foods are considered unhealthy based on the data from the Euromonitor. We also saw the increase in sales of transactions of burgers, fries, soft drinks, and the like. We saw too the impact of the pandemic on food behaviors. The food environment study showed us that families during the quarantine shifted to more processed foods, which are of course cheaper and easier to prepare. If we relate this to the rapid nutrition assessment survey done by FNRI, that people relied on food packs from government or donors, which are consisting mostly of canned foods and instant noodles. We found out too the impact of ads on television on the recall of unhealthy foods among children. But it looks like the viewership of television is on the decline as people shift to online viewing. We saw the increase in screen time of children ranging from 6 to 8 hours a day. We also saw that children would lie about their age just so they can use social media. And the food industry is capitalizing on this. More and more companies are shifting their marketing from television and radio to online marketing. It is alarming how powerless we are on what ads we see online. Technology allows for the artificial intelligence to know our profiles and use this information for marketing. You just Google about something, and in seconds, you see various ads about this in your social media. And there's the danger for our children who are vulnerable to all this marketing of unhealthy food. The market scan called this as intrusive and hyper-targeting. We learned of the exposure and power of marketing strategies that continually innovate with the changing preferences. Sadly, the strong family bonding is used against families. But all this information are helpful to build evidence for action. The current interventions have proven to be effective, including the additional tax on sugar sweetened beverages, the DepEd policy on healthy food options in schools, local legislation limiting the marketing of unhealthy foods within the premises of schools. We also have the front of pack labeling of calories, but this is voluntary. There is also hope that Filipinos are shifting towards consuming healthier foods. Some food companies are reformulating their products accordingly. And local government units can enact their own legislation without waiting for national legislation. The speakers also put forward recommendations to address this worsening food environment. These include legislation on restricting marketing of unhealthy food and beverages, calorie labeling in food establishments, more effective nutrition labeling of processed foods, subsidies for healthy foods such as brown rice, as well as supportive mechanisms, including non-involvement of food industry in policy decisions to prevent undue influence. Consumer education was also emphasized, coupled with increasing demand for healthier foods by learning from the marketing strategies of food companies. And lastly, the webinar calls for everyone to work together so we can build back better our food environment. So we hope to have more discussions in our next webinar to complete the picture of the profile of food of obesity in the country. So again, let me take this opportunity to invite everyone again for the part 3 of our webinar. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you, Ma'am Jo.
Kathy.
Thank you, Ma'am Jovi, for that very comprehensive synthesis and for capitalizing the key points from the presentations of our speakers. Over to you, Gab.
Right, so that concludes our webinar for today. We would like to thank everyone who is present here today, from our esteemed speakers, panelists, and participants, for sharing your day with us. Regarding the part 3, those who registered for the second part of this webinar for today, you are automatically registered for the third part of our webinar series, and you can just wait for our email. You can just wait for the links via email. So I hope everyone had a fruitful morning, hearing the timely and brilliant presentations of our speakers. Again, this is Gab Labrador. It was nice seeing you all again today, and have a great day.
Join us again for the third and final leg of this month-long webinar series on the 25th of March as we continue to move our children to the lighter side. Links will be provided to you via email, and you can catch us again on the live stream via NNC Facebook page. Once again, I am Catherine Bukton. See you all again next week. Keep safe and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you po.